Welcome to the MTN, the Yellow Chair, the link to the continent. My name is Thebe Ikalafeng. I'm the founder and chairman of Brand Africa. My guest today, Ralph Mupita, the Group Chief Executive and President of MTN, and the Group Chief Executive of Standard Bank, Sim Tshabalala. Welcome. Things are shifting quite dramatically in the world, whether it's from obviously impacted by elections, conflicts around the world, shifting alliances. How are you navigating that and its implication, or the implications to your business?
The period we're in now is the most complicated and most dangerous, certainly since the Second World War. And it's a period during which all of us confront, and certainly leadership in our businesses confront, the imperative need to understand what is happening globally in economics and in politics, because states at the moment are using their power and their power in trade and in investment to have political outcomes. It's a time during which many states are driving a mercantilist approach to relationships with other countries. And it's a time where there's a great deal of conflict. There's the war in the Ukraine, there's the Middle East, and lots of conflict on the African continent as well. But it's also a time of huge opportunity. So with that conflict and that complication comes opportunity. I've just come back from Washington, and we were having correspondent banking meetings and the IMF meetings. And what emerges from that is that actually the global economy is actually quite robust, that the African continent is likely to grow at about 4.1% this year, and into the end of the decade are at above 4%. And then post 2030, it will be the fastest growing region in the world. So that's the one thing. Even with all of this conflict and stress, South Africa is likely to grow by 2028 at about 2%. So it off a big base of $450 billion. And what is happening? There are opportunities arising from new alliances that are being formed. So during the Cold War, you had two blocks. You had to be on one side, whereas at the moment, people are having strategic partnerships. So the continent is in partnership with the Japanese, TICAD, the Chinese, FOCAC, with the US. There was that leadership conference that was held in Luanda just the other day, with the EU, with the Indians, with the Turkish, etc. And our job, and certainly the banker's job, is to identify those new trade and investment flows and exploit them for the benefit of the people of Africa.
So you spoke about the broader growth opportunities across the economy and the financial services. You obviously, how do you see your role in that?
We see our role as being a convener of all of that. We are in the center of the economy. We facilitate the movement of the money that is necessary for the movement of goods, people, capital, and ideas. We connect MTN to its suppliers and to its customers by facilitating their payments. We provide funding to MTN, and we hope that they will repay it on time.
They will, sir.
So we provide them. We provide them with advisory services and so forth. So our job is to facilitate this movement of goods, people, and ideas inside the continent and between the continent and its trading partners. And we do that through our customers.
So, Ralph, from a telco perspective, I mean, what's interesting, I'm asking that, particularly when we talk about these conflicts around the continent, around the world as well. You sometimes find yourself at the coalface of them, particularly receiving, you spoke earlier about interference, governance, or sometimes being instructed on how to run your business.
Look, I mean, just to build on some of the comments Sim has made, I've used this quote several times the last couple of weeks, so I hope people are not tired of it. It's Vladimir Lenin who said there's sometimes decades where nothing happens, and then there are weeks where decades happen. And I think we're in a period right now where there's a lot that is happening that will transform the next decade. So there's a lot of challenges. You raised the point about geopolitics, but I think there are a couple of trends to watch very carefully. The geopolitical dimensions, as Sim has articulated, are important. I think there's a demographic dimension to the period we're in. And from an African perspective, we are the youngest continent, in the world. And to Sim's point about growth beyond 2030, I think that demographic point is one that we need to be seized by in terms of the opportunity. I think the other big trend is obviously climate change. And I know there's been a pullback a little bit now around the talk about the climate change and what we need to do to keep this only home we know inhabitable in terms of temperatures. And the final one is technology. We are at the core phase, and we're at the moment where we're seeing one of the most rapid changes in technology in terms of AI and the direction it's going. And actually, Google, spoke about an important inflection point on the quantum computing, and that will revolutionize, drug discovery and other things. So I think we need to step back when we see all of this and seeing the wood from the trees, that we're at a moment of profound change, that in 10 years down the track, we'll look back and say, we lived through that moment. I mean, specific to MTN, I mean, the role that we do and the kind of pioneering spirit that MTN has had the last 30 years means we will have challenges along the way. Huh?
Yeah.
Connecting people in markets, whether it's here in South Africa, Nigeria, or Sudan. We're operating in a place like Sudan where, there has been 2 years plus of, a conflict in that region. So, this comes with the territory, and we have to engage and deal with these issues. So, we don't shrink from the challenges. Actually, the challenges often give us strength. And, if you're running an enterprise on the African continent, as we do, I'm sure Sim has the same view, is, you have to have the resilience that there'll be challenges that come along the way. But the opportunity is so structural that the bumps that you see along the way, over time, we can put a line through it and say, the opportunity is worth it. And we'll have challenges along the way, but there's more positives that we see. And as I said earlier, we are just at the beginning of this, enormous, digital economy revolution that will take place the next 10 to 20 years.
So in 2018 or so, I think the AfCFTA was ratified in Kigali, and that was seen as a big transformative opportunity for the continent in terms of obviously the flow of goods, but certainly from telcos and financial services. Maybe you can pick up from there, and Ralph can continue conversation. What do you see as the bottlenecks? Because we haven't quite seen the benefits that we talked about. We know it in theory, but we're not seeing anything yet. What do you see as what's stopping us from getting there? And perhaps ultimately, how do you see the bigger opportunity for you in the continent?
Oh, absolutely. Actually, the bottlenecks are the opportunity. And the fracturing of the world and the alliances I was referring to actually provide the opportunity for Africans, because it means we need to respond to the world on a united basis rather than the 54, 60 countries that are on the continent. And so what is happening? You have the AfCFTA, which is the largest free trade area on the continent. It's a massive market. And therefore, when people providing products and services to Africa ought to think of it as Africa, the continent, rather than South Africa, Nigeria, Kenya, and so forth. So that's the first thought. The bottleneck is the series of rules and regulations that make it difficult to move goods and people around and capital. And the AfCFTA is calculated to reduce those kinds of barriers. The other opportunity, of course, is the AU has got Agenda 2063, and it's got a set of goals and targets that are meant to help Africa face off to the world on our terms. And so when I made reference to those partnerships, TICAD is really a relationship between the Japanese and the African continent. The Japanese are not doing it out of the liberality of their hearts. They're after the minerals, the copper, the cobalt, the manganese, the gold, the platinum. Africans are now negotiating those types of arrangements on their own terms, rather than simply giving things away. So what are the impediments that the AfCFTA and things like Agenda 2063 are trying to break? It's one, that fractured nature of the African continent. Let it be more united as it negotiates with the world. We've got infrastructure that makes it difficult to move goods from Cape Town to Luanda, for example. So how do you make it easier for the trucks to move on the road and through the ports and so forth? We need to be more connected. So how do you get the data to move between various countries?
So, Rafa, I want you to build on that fractured nature, because it seems to me that the world is actually not going towards a fractured approach.
Whereas the continent is moving in the other direction.
Whereas the continent is moving in the direction.
Yeah.
How do you see it from your end, and the opportunities, and from your end the bottlenecks actually of us now unlocking the opportunity that AFCFTA should be?
Your boundaries are not, or physical boundaries of countries, are limitations for kind of progress. So obviously we must respect those, but we must create and architect kind of economic collaboration and cohesion on the African continent. How do you first and ensure that Africa gets the benefit of this kind of development path that will come over the next 10 years. And so we got to find our way into the rooms, at the AU and Addis Ababa, and not sit at the table and say, we have a perspective. We'll obviously respect the political leadership of the continent. But if we don't take a partnership approach, business, government, and civil society, we will lose this moment.
I absolutely love that perspective about being in the room. Do you see, both of you actually, and we can start with you, Asimba's end, because Ralph has talked about that we have to be in the room. Do you see your role as important in helping the country and the continent achieve? How do you see your role, rather, in helping the countries and the continent achieve those goals? Because it's always being seen, we're living through such interesting times that sometimes when business gets involved, it's seen as business is controlling the agenda. How do you see your role?
Firstly, we need to be clear about the division of labor and the role of business. The role of business, or let me think about it as Standard Bank, because I'm employed by Standard Bank, believe it or not, is...
Surprised.
Surprise. So the role of business in society is to create products and services that society needs, and in doing so, create prosperity. And to do that, from a banker's perspective, we need the rule of law, so that when we lend money to MTN, they fail to pay us, we can either have a nice conversation with Ralph, and they'll repay us.
We're going to pay you. Sim.
Because do you see there's like a bit of an underlying message there?
Sim, you're good with us, I tell you.
Or the loan with Thebe, then Thebe, we lend him the money, we expect him to repay it because he's trustworthy and we have a relationship, and we never have to rely on our contract. And as it happens, most of our customers meet their obligations as they fall due, and we never actually have to rely on our contracts. But when you rely on your contract, you need to be certain that the court system is going to work, that you're going to be able to recover your money, and so forth. So it's important. And in that context, Ralph and I have a duty to speak up when that rule of law and that ease of doing business is diminished. So that's the first piece. So when we do that, we're not being politicians, we're not being political, we're protecting our right to create products and services that society needs in order to generate prosperity. So that would be my first set of thoughts. My second set of thoughts would be to say a large part of our jobs also is to make sure that we create returns for our shareholders that adequately reward them for the risks that they take by being invested in us. An important part of that is country risk. So if we are here in South Africa, and South Africa becomes a place where there's social dislocation, it increases the cost of capital and it makes it more expensive for our shareholders to be invested in us. So we have a duty to speak up when there's social dislocation. So that would be the second bit. And then the third one is then to participate in the formal structures that create the space for us to add value.
But
one of those,
the AUs?
Well, it's in South Africa, or anyway, it's the public-private partnerships, B4SA and government, for example, where both of us are signatories and participants. That's one example. The other example from a banker's perspective is PPPs, where the public and the private sector are in partnership to provide, transmission lines and provide the funding for those transmission lines. And then the last place, and we may come back to it, would be in places like the B20 and the G20.
I want to build on what you said, that you have to raise your voice, you have to participate. That do you find that you are being welcomed in those rooms, or you seem to be interfering?
No, we're welcomed, and but it, to build on to Sim's points, we have to be seen as a partner for progress, and we have to demonstrate that we are the social partner for the progress of the nation states. Because when the continent moves forward, what's good for Africa as a continent collectively is good for our businesses with the Standard Bank, and so we are self-invested in the success of the continent. We are being listened to, and I think we have to continue to be engaged in the one area I wanted to add to what Sim had said is, we also need to bring kind of perspectives, because no one has monopoly on on all knowledge. And if we think about the regulatory space, and I speak specifically for the telco industry, is some of the regulations we have on the continent are stuck in a different era. If I speak about telecommunication, I think I was quoted in Kigali 2 days ago and saying the telecommunications regulations we have are stuck in the voice era. So the voice era is 1994 all the way to probably 2009. The data revolution kicked off about 2010 with 3G services, etc. But when you look at the regulations, when you visit lots of our countries, the regulations are still stuck in that era. They want 4, 5, 6 players in a market. All of these must be contributing to infrastructure and building. But the world has moved on from that. The US has 3 players for 300 million plus. China has 3 operators for 1.5 billion. India has 2.5 for 1.5. And what they've done is they've modernized the regulatory frameworks for today. And so these are some of the additional things we need to be embracing to say, if we're going to attract capital into these markets for the massive investment required to build the digital railroads for Africa, you've got to make it, to Sim's point, conducive for the investors to say, we'll put the next incremental dollar in Africa because we're going to see the return. Otherwise, the money will flow to Brazil for those who have emerging multiplier. So that conversation we have to have, with the perspective of Sim as shareholders globally, so he sees and engages. So we need to bring that to the table with our political leaders.
With the political leaders. So you just came from the MWC,
Yep.
and you were just talking about some of the things, how you seem to be stuck in the past. So where's the future headed that you've learned? Is the one big thing that you learned from your recent MWC conversations that says, guys, this is the shift that we must make right away?
What I took away wasn't so much a lesson, but I sense a passion. We were in Kigali, and we had President Kagame came and opened, and there were people from all over the continent. I left there with a sense of passion and a desire for us to improve, kind of our lot from where we are today. There was a lot of energy in Kigali, and excitement around this thing called AI that's coming.
Snake oil.
No, it's not snake oil. We'll probably have a conversation about this.
You in town, so it's...
I'm going to take a bet with Sim today that in 5 years' time he will regret his comment. That's not so clear, but in 5 years' time he's going to regret. He's going to regret his the comment. So
No, so that I don't come across as a Luddite. Can I comment on it after?
Are you going to night school as well, like I'm doing?
I'm always jealous that you are in the right lane. I don't know. You correct yourself, because this is on record.
But coming back to your point, to me it was the energy, and the passion, and the young people were there, and wanting to find out, how does this all work and so forth. So, that's. It's a feel, and it's a sensing thing that this continent has got a bright future. Huh? That's what I took out from MWC Kigali.
Got it. So, yeah, it is about a future. I mean, 40% of the world's population by 2050. So, we are the future, no question about it. So, while talking about the future, one of the things, both of these interests you got about Ambition 2025, I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow at the end of the month, because it'll be
End of the year.
end of the year, because it'll be 2026. But what I absolutely love, I've always loved the one ad, which is they call it Africa and we call it home.
Yep.
In practical terms, though, what does that mean?
Just think of the imagery, the home. Think of the emotional attachment you've got to your home. And so that is a signal to people that we are passionate about our beloved continent. That's one. As far as growth goes, frankly, it refers to GDP growth. But importantly, in doing that, we make a contribution to the world and Africa becoming a better place in which to live. So the social elements to it all. How does it manifest itself? Let me start with the joke we're making about artificial intelligence.
The snake oil joke.
The snake oil joke. There is the snake oil, but there's also the fact. So when we approach this debate, we say to ourselves, there is no question but that artificial intelligence is here, that large language models are ubiquitous, that predictive AI is important, and our approach to it is to invest and make sure that our people are equipped to respond to it. But we also are reluctant as an institution to be at the bleeding edge of it, because we don't want to incur first mover taxes, but we also don't want to be incurring laggard taxes. So we just have to be in the right position, just at the right time, to make sure that when the use cases prove that things work, we're able to adopt them very, very quickly. That investment is vast and is necessary for the continent. So that's one area where we're making a contribution. The other one is the continent has got the minerals that the world needs for its transition. The copper, the cobalt, the platinum, the coal, as I was saying, the gas. And we need to facilitate the extraction thereof so that the world benefits from it.
I'm going to go back a little bit to what they told you at MWC when they said to you, you're stuck in the past. You're actually not quite stuck in the past, because Ambition 2025 is actually about shifting from telco to a different platform.
Stay away from banking.
Oh.
So you move into a platform business, right? So you're thinking, we're coming to that conversation in a minute. But I'm still trying to understand how he's actually inching his way away from what he does.
I mean, look, from an MTN point of view, we are driven by the evolution of technologies. There was a voice era, then there was a data era, and I think we're now into the AI era. And at the start of each era, you're not quite sure how things will work out. You have a sense, and so you need to remain, fairly agile. From our perspective, the Ambition 2025 strategy, our board has said it's, substantially the right strategy, and carry on.
Carry on.
It's not as if you're going to drop on 31st of December and say, whoa, we're going to stop what we're doing and do something different. We're just looking at a couple of areas where we said we want to have some pivots or allocate additional resources there. We do think of our business as essentially 3 platforms, all under one MTN group. Connectivity in of itself is a platform, the services that you consume. We think going forward, there are 2 particular areas that are, big growth areas. The home, connecting homes is going to become a big area for us. We'll build a business that over the next decade, we think will be as big as the business we currently have. The enterprise opportunities, enterprise in Africa are not as connected as you see elsewhere in other regions. And so that in of itself is an opportunity of, bringing, ICT services, to the enterprise. The fintech space, we're not encroaching on banking space.
We're coming to the big fun. We're going to have a ring out here for both.
We have a ring and we want a boxing club. But I mean, on a serious note, we're not trying to be a bank. Huh? But the only thing that we're thinking about is, on the fintech side, our business model is that we are looking to serve those who are unbanked and underserved. We make, through our infrastructure, less than $2 average revenue per customer in that space. Many banks won't wake up. Standard Bank might wake up to serve those customers, but many institutions will not wake up for that revenue opportunity. And we're leveraging our infrastructure of telecommunications, proximity to the customer, the way they recharge, and say, hey, whilst you're recharging, can we, can we help you, with your own personal financial journey? So we see ourselves as complementary to the banks. And the final area is digital infrastructure. We think there's a space to play really around fiber, data centers, and ultimately the infusion of AI. And we'll do it responsibly, over time. But I don't think you need to see it as an or. It's an and. It's a very complementary, part of the chain. And I know from my previous experience in financial services, if you want to be a bank, and Sim knows more than I, the capital requirements, the regulatory scrutiny, it's intense.
But Sim, do you buy the story? Because when you split,
Trying to be provocative.
no, I don't know whether he buys the story. Because he already said he wants his access to financial services. To me, that sounds like banking.
No,
Do you feel threatened, by the way?
No, I don't. To be brutally frank with you, no, I don't. And let me tell you why. A bank is an institution that takes deposits, holds them in safekeeping, and advances those deposits by way of loans to other people,
Yes.
and makes absolutely certain that when those people who've made deposits, when they want their deposits back, they're able to repay them. It just so happens that in that process, a lot of other activities happen necessary for you to service that client. So payments are necessary. So receiving a deposit actually is in the nature of a payment, and advancing the loan is also in the nature of a payment, and you need technology for that purpose.
Do that.
And the technologists will help you to do that, whether it be tech companies, fintechs, or telcos. So that's how I think about it. I don't think about it as competition. I just think about it as complementary,
like he says,
and helps us to fulfill our mandate and our purpose.
Who owns the customer in this new ecosystem? Because like you say, we're complementary. So who owns the customer, or how do you collaborate without eroding trust? Because I'm a Standard Bank guy, or I'm a mobile money guy.
I think
It depends on the activity.
Yeah, it depends on the activities. Sim, I mean, if I can just throw a view, is that nobody owns the customer. The customer, particularly in today's world, has got tremendous amount of choice. We have to stop thinking in that kind of ownership sense.
I like
because every day you got to fight for the customer today. There's ultra competition in today's world, and the traditional competitors are important set, but you've also got to think about the kind of non-traditional competitors that are coming in.
So I want to shift a little bit now from the hard business type questions, if we maybe talk a little bit about leadership, but not so much. But both of you, to me, this is like an African Union, because these are the number one most admired telco brand, number one most admired banking brand in the continent, in our Cyber Brand Africa that we do every year. You are the standard bearers of excellence, not African excellence, of excellence in Africa, because it's global excellence. But how do you keep your teams anchored on the values when navigating multiple markets, multiple governing structures, multiple regulatory approaches? How do you? Who spoke first? Last.
I spoke last.
You spoke last. Yes. Sorry. How do you?
Okay. So
how do you
on
navigate?
this side, you're giving him time to think. That's what I see. What you do. On a serious note, Thebe, you're a marketing person, and you will recall you made reference to standard bearers. If you go back in history in Standard Bank, the coat of arms when this company was in its early days had two antelope on the sides, representing the antelope that you find on the African continent. It had blue skies representing the blue skies that one finds on the African continent. And then it had the standard, the flag, and it made reference to an old Latin notion which was Prodiant Vexilla, which means let the standards go forward. Because in Roman times, when people went into battle or war, they carried standards. That's where the notion of being a standard bearer comes from. going forward, moving forward. So that's important. Why is that little story important? It's important because it speaks to the DNA of the company.
Yep.
It's an old company with an old set of values that are centered around the notion of trust. The most important value actually in the Standard Bank set of values is trust. And so when we recruit people and when we tell our stories and when we motivate one another, we motivate ourselves on the basis of that set of values. The people who work for us are people who believe in those values and those principles. And then we set then our strategies, which is how do we compete on the basis of those values. There are certain things we will just not do. But then, of course, they tell me that the bank, like the church, is not a museum of saints, it's a school of sinners. So you might have a bunch of values that you think you've got.
I'll be using that from now on.
Now and again, people will do stuff that is unacceptable, whether it be malfeasance, dishonest, etc. But what do you do when that happens? You hold them to those values and you treat them like a cancer. You excise them from your business. So we've got a purpose, we've got a set of values, we've got a strategy that is linked to that purpose, that set of values, and we contract on that basis as well. Most people have got a performance agreement that holds them to actions that support that strategy and that outcome. And for the rest, you just have to hope that that people stick to those values.
Just I started on a board of bank for 15 years, and one of the things I admired about banks, at least in that space, was we had an incident on one teller held R1 back, and we fired him.
Okay, I've got two stories.
I've heard one of them.
We fired him on the spot.
Okay, can I tell you two stories?
Yes.
This is a court case, so you can go and read up on it. I can't remember the name of the case, but there was a bank teller who stole $5. It wasn't $1 in our case. It was R5, and they were dismissed. The matter went all the way to court, and the court ruled. And the reason for it is that it's not so much that the matter was de minimis. It was the issue of honesty and trust.
The value you spoke about are quite yes.
And funny enough, it may have been better if they'd stolen R1 million rather than R5, because if you can't trust somebody with R5, what can you trust them with? That's the one story. The second story was we had the DOJ at our door, the Department of Justice, and the Serious Fraud Office of the United States at our door for a number of years as a result of our chief executive and a number of staff members in one of our branches in another country having bribed the leadership in a particular country. And we owned it. We stood up, we accepted it, and we went to the authorities and said, here are the facts, this is what has happened, and here's what we're doing about it. Here's how we're excising the cancer and so forth. And why that's important is that issue of say, well, in that 54,000 employees, there are some people who will steal money and there are some people who will commit bribes. But what do you do about it when it happens?
Also, Ralph, I know it's also quite important to you.
Sure.
So how do you navigate that? And perhaps I think what's so interesting is what are those examples which look so small but are fundamental from your experience?
So we're actually a fairly young organization, huh?
Indeed.
If you think about in kind of organizational history, we're young. But what's built MTN to date, and I like to think about the bookends of an organization. So there's a purpose, and actually there's your values. You've got to first of all think about the continent and see in the continent a better and a brighter future. In the way that we kind of reviewed our values, we did a values refresh a couple of years back. So we say, we use can do with integrity, because can do can have a dark side to it. You know, it could be
just do whatever it takes. Yeah, shortcuts.
Yes. So we say, guys, we want to tap into this can do spirit because it's about innovation. It's about
agility. It's
about all of it. And absolutely. When you bring those two things together, and then you ask, your teams, are we living towards these values? And I'm using that one as an example. And actually, one of the things that we are, starting this year is we're saying the way you perform in terms of meeting your KPIs, etc. For sure, it's important that you meet your KPIs, but the how of it is important. So we're now having this thing called a values-based assessment. So,
as part of your performance evaluation area.
We started it this year.
For everybody.
So people are a little bit nervous about that.
and saying it will get weaponized. But I think, we'll work through the issues, but the way you deliver the results is important. You don't want to have a scorched earth, kind of society where the numbers delivered is the only thing that matters. You need something that is a balancer there. So, we're going through this, and I'm saying we must walk through these hot coals there, and get to the other side, because we run a multinational business. You can't be in every situation. You can't see everything. So you have to hire people that you believe, to the point that you raised, that you trust, and that they live the values of the company, and that you won't be second guessing them.
So you hired to the values, as some says, and I think you had some examples as well of how you've tried to ensure that this happens. Or have you had instances where you say this is an example of how we measure values?
So I'll give a different example, but it plays to the same point, which is, there was a time, I think it was actually in Cote d'Ivoire, 2018, 2019, the team were giving them a really hard time about their performance relative to peers. And they said, well, company X, they're not doing the SIM registration properly. And we think we can make our budget by kind of turning, working in line with how, the peers. We said that's not acceptable. And in fact, we will adjust your performance contracts to note this particular issue, because we want you to have the right behavior.
Yeah, the right behavior.
Okay. So if somebody is letting people from Burkina Faso through and buy SIM cards without a KYC process, that's unacceptable. And, we will say to you, fine, we understand that others are doing it. We'll find a way to talk to party X, but we're not going to do that. And if it's going to impact your performance agreements, we note it. We'll even tell our remuneration committee that we're making these adjustments. So it's a way of deterring people from doing excessive things because they're focused on kind of the performance scorecards.
Just on that point, we say at Standard Bank, do the right business the right way.
Yeah.
Do the right business the right way.
Yeah.
One question, perhaps, as we begin to wrap up, a couple of questions. The one big global question I want to sort of towards the end close with is the G20. South Africa is hosting the G20. Both of you are quite involved. I know Standard Bank is the lead partner. What would be your measure of success out of this convention, if you will, of the world in Africa?
What's the one big thing? I would say a win for South Africa would be the policy stances adopted at the end of the G20, led by South Africa, get adopted by the United States next year. That would be a win. Now, there are hundreds of recommendations people are making. And as a banker, can I just tell you about three that relate
Of course,
yes. The Finance and Infrastructure Task Force that I was chairing. The continent needs about $170 billion a year of infrastructure. It's the roads, the bridges, the connectivity that we're talking about. But we can only raise 85 billion. How are we going to close that gap? So that's the first thing. Build the right infrastructure, finance it appropriately, but how do we find the money? We do so by asking people to change some of the rules and regulations that make it difficult for foreigners to invest, and also for domestic financial institutions, whether they be insurance companies or banks, by virtue of a set of rules and regulations called the Basel Rules, the Basel III. Essentially, what we're basically saying is they should be changed so that we as banks hold less capital for the funding that we provide. If we hold less capital, we can lend more. And the reason for that is because the data tells us that the capital we're being made to hold is too much relative to the riskiness of our project. So that's the one. And if that was allowed, we would be able to do more in our projects. We're also saying change the rules so that we can partner with development finance institutions, multilateral, so that DBSA, the Africa Finance Corporation, and so forth, partner with them so that we can attract banks as well, again, and insurance companies and philanthropies to do what people are referring to as blended finance. And then the third set of recommendations says, well, if you stimulate the funders to invest in that infrastructure, the money gets into the economy, but how do you get it to flow right through to SMEs?
Mm.
Many recommendations, one of which, for example, is please pay them on due date. Don't hold back on their funding, on their money. Pay them after 180 days, as people often do. Pay them on due date would be it. So we've contributed to that finance track, but the ultimate outcome we would love would be the president has led the packaging of these recommendations, and the US authorities take them forward.
Got it. So policies and partnerships are at the center of what you want to see as this is a win for us to be able to do the things we want to do. Ralph,
can I just mention why, so that people don't just understand why I'm making reference to the US? They're
the next chair of the
G20.
G20, and I think Vance will be coming through to South Africa to take that off. Ralph, from your end?
Look, I mean, I think Sim has covered it fully, so I won't spend too much time on the point, because I think the outcome he raises is the one that I think business collectively in South Africa has, which is the recommendations are accepted. Why that is important in this particular geopolitical climate is that it will signal an embracing of this kind of multilateral approach, which I think has been shaken a bit to the core, if I may say so. So it would be a clear signal that there is this appreciation that actually we're better together. Success would be that they are taken forward, and that we can measure in a year's time that there's been progress on these resolutions.
I read something about you that that you're about to retire, and I'm looking at you like, he's about to retire. I didn't realize there's a retirement age.
60.
If you're doing what you love.
The world is a stage. There's a time to get off.
There's a time to get off, right? So when you get off that stage, you're going to turn 60 in a couple. What is the one moment that you say, in my career, this truly humbled me?
So because I'm holding the mic, doesn't matter what question you've asked me, I'm going to change I'm going to give you 3.
Ask yourself a question and answer it.
So there are 3. The one was, it actually happened last week. I was at Newark Airport, and I was getting into the train station, and I put my ticket on the scanner, and it was the wrong way around. And the guy looked at me, and you can tell I'm getting nervous because he's a policeman, and my ticket is not working. And he says, "Can't you read? Turn the thing over." So that was a bit humiliating, and I felt like saying, "You're not the boss of me."
That's where I come from.
Yeah, cheapers, man. But on a serious note, the most humbling thing for me was, frankly, we made a mistake in executing our operating model, and it was actually a big mistake, and we had to change it. And I had to say to my team, folks, let's stop kidding ourselves. We need to change this. It's the wrong thing to have done. We need to tell the board, and we need to tell the organization that we're changing again. And I had to eat humble pie and do that. That was quite humbling. And then the third one is, Ralph knows this, I've got one of the greatest wives in the world, but she acts like the Marcus Aurelius's slave, who, whenever people are singing your praises, reminds you that you're just a man. Just a man. And each of us needs that type of person in our lives, whether it's in our private lives or in our teams. In your team, you need to have people that say, no, but we know that this is nonsense, so we need to tell Ralph it's nonsense. Just as an example, you need people who love you and respect you, who'll say, no, on that one, Chief.
People who tell you the truth.
Tell you the truth.
I like that. Absolutely. Ralph, I mean, you just renewed your mandate for another term. When you look back now, because, before you renewed this thing, you must have thought hard about it. And you said, another term, bruising term across the continent. And you've had a few bruising moments, whether it is in Ghana, it's Nigeria, it is everywhere in this country, whether it's in South Africa. What is the one thing that just reduced you?
I might sound boring.
Be boring, please. We're here for boring people.
Look, I think the CEO role, you're humbled every single day, because the things that you're dealing with are generally in the gray. There's no black and white. So you are actually humbled, you get used to being humbled. But I want to add to the story that I thought that was my story, but he stole it. I want to speak first. But I get humbled, at home, I'm just dad. They don't care. The kids don't care. They hear that you're this great guy. They read in the papers, headlines, and they say, "Oh, but you're just like that."
Just that.
And to Sim's point, I mean, I really find that kind of leveling and reassuring, because, you know, the time will come when I'm not at MTN, and my self-identity, as seriously as I take this job, my identity should not be attached to it.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, I always tell people that, you know, take your job seriously, but don't take yourself in the job seriously. Okay? It's a very fine
Take yourself
distinction.
seriously, but don't take yourself in the job seriously.
Yeah, take the job seriously, but don't take yourself in the job seriously. You're just that person.
I'm learning so many things.
You
So that'll be
are-
my lines, but I'm gonna steal that.
Yeah, I'm my mother's third child.
Yes.
Okay, I'm still the boy from Mutare. Okay, as far as she's concerned.
Yes.
So when you get carried away and you start thinking, "Wow, I'm this," just get reminded. She will remind you very quickly. So, I mean, coming to business, you know, humbling moments. As I said, there are many, but you know, humbling can also be humbling in the sense of how you get surprised by often people's resilience. So, you know, I look at the people in Sudan. We operate in Sudan. I mean, our teams continue to walk in a war-torn country. That is humbling. And this is a place where there's enormous human displacement, but we have people. And then you think you have problems, and then you get humbled by that.
So truly the last comments, my new book is just coming out, Rooted and Rising. And the one thing I've done, it's about reclaiming our culture and redefining our global influence. One of the things I've done in it, I've closed every chapter with a playlist, an African playlist. What is on your list?
Oh, it differs, but you laugh. But Ladysmith, Black Mambazo, Dlondlobala Njalo.
Oh, I love
What?
Ladies Smith. I won't laugh. I love them.
Love them. Second, Dame Kiri
Take it out.
Teknawa.
The Australian
the-
operas. Yes.
No, New Zealand.
New Zealand, sorry.
Yeah,
Correct
New
myself.
Zealand.
Yes, New Zealand.
New Zealand. And when she sings The World in Union,
One of my
I mean,
favorite.
I play it loud when I'm in my car, and I feel the need to lift myself up.
What do you listen to? I mean, as you're going through, just to calm your nerves or to disrupt your calm self.
I listen to a lot of music, and I think one of my kids says eclectic, and I had to look up the word to say this.
That
Like
sounds-
all over the place.
It's a big word.
It's a big word. So, no, I listen to a lot of music from. I mean, I was born in Zimbabwe, and so I grew up listening to Thomas Mapfumo and Oliver Mtukudzi.
Yes.
So you always find.
We have Oliver, by the way, in my playlist.
Oh,
I love Oliver.
I'd now got job praise. The new Oliver, as far as I'm concerned, is that some. So because I'm Shona speaking, so from time to time I connect with my roots. So I think you always find an Oliver Mtukudzi job praise. When I'm under pressure, which is often, I listen to David Bowie and Queen Under Pressure.
David Bowie.
I let that thing play, and I'll put it on like 10 times.
Under Pressure.
Under Pressure.
I know the song. Yes.
And then I listen to Maverick City. So you'll find Maverick City. And and I listen to what my children are listening to. So
That's how you keep young.
that's how you keep young, and now you come across as cool. You know, you're not cool to the kids, huh? The cool old man.
The cool dad.
The cool dad.
Sim Tshabalala, Group Chief Executive of Standard Bank. Thank you so much for joining the Yellow Chair, our connection to the continent. It's been, to me, I've learned so much. You know, I spent 15 years on the board of a bank, but today I feel like I have a whole masterclass.
No, thank you.
A whole masterclass here.
This was great, and thank you, Ralph, for the privilege. Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us.
And Ralph, thank you for being part of the pioneers in ensuring that we are connected. Thank you so much. That's it.